The city of Chicago had never been more alive with the hum of ambition, and neon-lit streets, yet it also held corners where hope seemed to vanish. In one of the sleek glass towers overlooking Lake Michigan, Ethan Harper watched it all from a minimalist office perched high above the chaos below. At 38 he was already a billionaire, a tech genius whose innovations had reshaped industries from autonomous vehicles to renewable energy. His name, though whispered in elite circles, was rarely shouted in public. He preferred it that way. To the world he was an enigma, to the boardrooms and investors he was untouchable. Ethan had learned early that power and wealth were like fire. They could warm, illuminate, or burn everything in their path. Unlike many of his contemporaries, he wasn't driven by vanity or ego. The Forbes lists, the awards, the endless headlines, they meant nothing to him. What mattered were the unseen, unheard people whose lives could be changed if someone was willing to act. And for years he had watched quietly, letting data, social trends, and cold statistics inform him of the cracks in society. The children who slipped through the safety nets, the communities devastated by poverty, the invisible struggles masked by urban glamour. Tonight, like many nights, Ethan sipped his coffee in silence, eyes tracing the city's restless lights. On his desk, a tablet displayed maps of Chicago's most underprivileged neighborhoods, locations of recent crimes involving youth, reports of missing children, and the latest social service failures. Each file carried a name, a photo, a story. And for Ethan, each one was a spark of responsibility he could not ignore. He didn't feel the need for applause or recognition. His wealth was a tool, a means to act where others hesitated. Yet, the anonymity of his intervention had become both a shield and a necessity. If the world knew who he was, the children would be put at risk. The criminals he sought to dismantle would retaliate, media frenzy would cloud the truth, and the very cause he championed would be jeopardized. So he remained unseen, a ghost moving in plain sight. Evenings like this, he allowed himself to reflect on how he arrived here. A childhood spent in modest means, a father who believed intellect was the only currency that mattered, and a mother who taught him that empathy was a form of courage. They were gone now, leaving Ethan with wealth he hadn't sought and a moral compass he could not abandon. It was that compass that led him, night after night, into the heart of Chicago's forgotten streets, where young lives were fragile and every decision carried weight. On the other side of the city, a group of teenagers huddled in an abandoned warehouse, the wind whistling through cracked windows. They were wary, quiet, surviving in a world that had all but forgotten them. They didn't know that high above, in his glass tower, a man was tracking their movements, not for profit, not for control, but for salvation. Ethan studied their patterns, the networks that preyed upon them, the bureaucracies that failed them. He noted the delivery times, escape routes, and even the smallest acts of resistance these kids employed to survive. Every piece of data, every observation, was a step closer to an intervention that could change their lives forever. Yet, despite his meticulous planning and careful watch, Ethan felt the pulse of uncertainty. One wrong move, one leak, one miscalculation, and the fragile threads holding these children together could snap. That knowledge, rather than discouraging him, fueled his resolve. He didn't seek accolades, he sought results. Each life saved was a victory beyond the reach of social media metrics or stock prices. Tonight, however, was different. Tonight, the city's hum felt charged, alive with a sense of anticipation. A new file had arrived on his tablet, a report about a missing 12-year-old girl named Maya, last seen near the train tracks on the west side. Her case was tangled in red tape, overlooked by authorities, dismissed by the system. Yet Ethan felt an unusual pull, a silent whisper in his conscience that this was not just another mission, it was the beginning of something larger. He closed his eyes, visualizing the steps ahead, the covert planning, the allies he would need, the potential dangers that lay in wait. The world above him slept, oblivious, but Ethan Harper, billionaire, strategist, silent guardian, was awake, ready to step into the shadows. In that quiet moment he made a silent vow. The children would be seen, their lives mattered, and no system, no criminal, no societal indifference would stand in his way. And with that, the first domino in a chain of events that would ripple across the nation was set in motion. The city was restless, unaware of the silent war unfolding in its shadows. While Ethan Harper observed from above, the streets pulsed with a tension that no surveillance camera could fully capture. Gang activity, human trafficking rings, and corrupt officials operated with near impunity, their actions hidden behind bureaucratic paperwork and carefully curated public images. Chicago had always prided itself on progress, but beneath the surface, cracks had been forming for decades, and the most vulnerable, children, teenagers, and the marginalized, were paying the heaviest price. Maya's disappearance was just the tip of the iceberg. Reports from shelters and police precincts painted a grim picture. A network of kidnappings, illegal adoptions, and identity manipulations that stretched across multiple states. Yet the general public remained oblivious, distracted by headlines of politics, celebrity scandals, and economic fluctuations. Only a handful of journalists had picked up small anomalies in the data, dismissed as coincidence, or buried under the weight of institutional denial. Ethan's plan was audacious, bordering on dangerous. He intended to expose the web of corruption while simultaneously rescuing those trapped within it, but the risks were immense. Every move he made could trigger retaliation, not only against him but also against the children he sought to protect. He had to navigate a labyrinth of legal loopholes, corrupt enforcers, and opportunistic criminals, all while maintaining his anonymity. One slip-up, one hint of his involvement, and Maya, or worse dozens like her, could vanish forever. Across town, Detective Laura Mendez stared at the photos pinned to her office wall. Missing children, reports of suspicious adoptions, and a growing list of financial transactions tied to shell corporations. She had been investigating quietly for months, frustrated by the lack of support from higher-ups who dismissed the cases as isolated incidents. The missing girl in her folder was Maya, and something about this particular case made her uneasy. The deeper she dug, the more she sensed a pattern, one that hinted at a network bigger and more dangerous than any she had encountered. Meanwhile, on the digital front, hackers and journalists were quietly connecting threads of activity. Unusual hospital record deletions, falsified adoption papers, and offshore accounts funding mysterious organizations. Anonymous tips kept landing in secure inboxes, signaling that someone powerful and determined, was quietly pulling strings behind the scenes. Ethan was aware of these leaks but could not risk revealing himself. Every action had to be calculated, every contact vetted. Trust was a currency he could not afford to squander. The stakes were personal too. Ethan carried the memory of children he had once failed to save, of families broken by neglect and greed. Those ghosts haunted him, whispering at the edge of consciousness, urging him not to falter. Maya, in this sense, was more than a mission. She was a reckoning, a chance to prove that wealth and power could serve as instruments of protection rather than destruction. Failure was not an option. Ethan convened a discreet meeting that night in a warehouse he had secured months ago. Around him, a small but formidable team assembled. Mia Chin, a former cybersecurity prodigy, Luis Ortega, an ex-FBI agent with a talent for tracking complex criminal networks, and Ayanna Fields, a social worker whose insight into Chicago's youth was unmatched. Together, they pored over data, maps, and timelines, connecting the dots between abandoned warehouses, fraudulent adoption agencies, and the rare public appearances of individuals suspected of orchestrating the abductions. "What we're seeing," Luis said, pointing to a network diagram that spanned multiple counties, "is not random. This is a system. It's been running for years and Maya is just one of many." Ayanna's voice was quiet but firm. "Every child we miss is another failure we'll have to live with. We can't make mistakes." Mia added, "And the deeper we go, the more dangerous it gets. If they suspect someone is poking at their operations, they'll escalate." Ethan absorbed their warnings with a steady gaze. Danger had always been part of the equation. What mattered was precision, preparation, and the relentless pursuit of truth. Tonight, the mission was no longer theoretical. It was immediate. Maya's life, and the lives of dozens of others, depended on their ability to stay ahead of a network that had remained invisible for far too long. At the same time, Ethan understood the social dimension. He needed to influence public perception without revealing himself. The city's apathy had allowed the perpetrators to thrive. To dismantle the network, awareness had to be raised subtly, strategically. The media had to be guided without exposing the operation, communities needed to be alerted without causing panic, and law enforcement had to be nudged toward action without tipping off the criminals. The clock ticked mercilessly. Every hour Maya remained missing, the likelihood of her survival diminished. Ethan's hands hovered over the city map, eyes scanning every possible escape route, every hidden corridor. The stakes were painfully clear. This was not just about rescuing one child, it was about challenging a system that had allowed exploitation to flourish unchecked. And in doing so he risked everything. His fortune, his reputation, even his life. As the night deepened, Chicago slumbered, oblivious to the invisible battle waging above and below its streets. But Ethan Harper, billionaire, strategist, and unseen guardian, did not rest. For him there was no sleep, no comfort, no reprieve. Only the knowledge that one misstep could mean the difference between life and death, and the unshakable determination to tip the balance toward justice. It was shortly after midnight when the first real lead arrived. Ethan's secure line buzzed quietly, an encrypted message that carried more weight than any phone call could. The tip was anonymous, yet precise. A warehouse on the outskirts of Joliet, abandoned for years with recent signs of movement. Security cameras, if there had ever been any, were long since disabled. No one would notice, or at least that was the assumption. Maya had been spotted there. Ethan leaned over the glowing screen, his pulse quickening despite the careful calm he maintained. Every detail of the message was a challenge. The coordinates were correct, but the timestamps were vague. The description of the facility matched old city records, but there were no permits, no official documentation. Whoever sent this knew the layout intimately, or had been inside recently. Luis crossed his arms, frowning as he studied the satellite images. "It's not just a hiding spot," he said. "It's a hub. I can see compartments, reinforced doors, ventilation shafts. Whoever's running this operation has resources, money, manpower, technology. Maya isn't just being held, she's being protected in a way that makes extraction extremely difficult." Ayana's eyes narrowed. Protected? From what? Or from whom? Mia interjected, her fingers flying across a laptop keyboard, pulling together cross-referenced data from missing person reports, social service records, and financial transactions. "From the law most likely," she said. "And maybe from anyone who cares. Whoever's behind this has planned carefully. They're not sloppy. They've erased evidence, manipulated records, and probably threatened anyone who might interfere. This is bigger than we imagined." Ethan absorbed the information silently, weighing the risks. This was the moment where strategy would meet reality. The warehouse could be a trap or worse, a point of no return. Yet he had promised himself long ago that no obstacle, no matter how daunting, would stop him from saving Maya. He had the fortune, the skills, and the team. What he lacked was time. By dawn they had a plan, a multi-pronged approach. Ethan and Luis would lead a reconnaissance of the exterior, noting entrances, exits, and security patterns. Mia would handle digital surveillance, attempting to hack into any active systems and intercept communications. Ayana would prepare for Maya's extraction, ready to provide immediate care and support. Every movement had to be synchronized down to the second. When the team arrived at the outskirts of Joliet, the warehouse loomed like a silent monolith in the pre-dawn haze. Rust streaked the corrugated metal walls, and broken windows reflected the first pale light of morning. From the distance, it looked abandoned, just as the message had promised. But Ethan knew better. The silence was deliberate, a calculated layer of protection designed to lull outsiders into a false sense of security. As they moved closer, Mia's tablet beeped urgently. "Multiple heat signatures inside," she whispered. "At least 5, possibly more. And one matches Maya's profile." Ethan felt a chill despite the warming spring air. There she was, somewhere inside, the girl whose life had been stolen, whose existence had been erased by negligence and malice. She was alive, and she was alone with strangers who had meticulously planned her disappearance. Luis motioned for quiet. "We need eyes on every corner before we move. This isn't a raid, it's a rescue. One wrong step and it could be over before it begins." They split into pairs, Ethan and Luis creeping along the perimeter while Mia monitored signals from the roof of a nearby structure. Ayana stayed back, coordinating with first responders on standby, ready to spring into action once Maya was in sight. Every step was deliberate, every breath measured. Then it happened. A single figure appeared at one of the warehouse doors, silhouetted against the dim interior light. The team froze. Ethan recognized the posture instantly, tall, confident, calculating. Whoever this was, they were not simply a guard. They were someone who had rehearsed every possibility, someone who would not hesitate to strike. Mia's voice trembled through the earpiece, barely audible. "Movement? There's more than one. Looks like they're setting traps. Ethan, you need to see this." From inside the warehouse, the faintest sound of a child crying pierced the morning air. Wow. The sound hit Ethan with a force that made his chest tighten and his mind sharpen. There was no turning back. Everything they had planned until now led to this moment. One misstep and the girl could vanish forever. One success and a hidden world of trafficking, corruption, and stolen lives could start to crumble. Ethan glanced at his team. Every face was set with determination, fear, and resolve. They had trained for this, planned for this, and now, finally, the opportunity was here. But the warehouse was more than a building. It was a crucible. Inside, the stakes were human lives, fragile and precious. Outside, the clock ticked, and the city remained blissfully unaware of the moral storm gathering on its edge. With a deep breath, Ethan whispered to himself, "No more shadows. Time to bring her back." The mission had begun and nothing would ever be the same. Ethan and Luis crouched behind a stack of rusted shipping containers, their eyes fixed on the warehouse's main entrance. Every shadow seemed to move with a life of its own, every creak of metal a possible alarm. Maya's faint cries echoed through the night air, guiding them like a fragile thread to the heart of the building. Mia's voice came through the earpiece, tight with tension. "Multiple cameras just went offline. Whoever's inside knows we're here. They're watching the perimeter now. Ethan, you're Etia?" Ethan's jaw tightened. "Almost there. Stay with me." As they approached a side door, Luis signaled for a halt. There, etched into the concrete wall, was a series of symbols, familiar codes used by black market networks for child trafficking. Ethan's stomach turned. These weren't just guards, this was a meticulously orchestrated network. Every element inside the warehouse had a purpose: to conceal, manipulate, and control. Inside, the atmosphere was suffocating. Dim, flickering lights barely illuminated the vast interior, revealing rows of stacked crates, caged animals, and in the far corner, small makeshift rooms. Through a cracked window of one, Ethan glimpsed her, Maya, curled on the floor, clutching a worn blanket. Her hair was matted, eyes wide with confusion and fear. For a moment, the world outside the warehouse ceased to exist. Luis whispered, "We can't wait any longer." Ethan nodded, signaling the team to advance. As they moved closer, a voice cut sharply across the empty space, chillingly calm. "I've been expecting you." From the shadows emerged a tall man, sharp-suited, face partially obscured by a low-brimmed hat. His posture was confident, almost theatrical, as though he had been rehearsing this confrontation. Beside him, two more figures stepped forward, each carrying a sense of authority that spoke of experience and ruthlessness. Maya's cries intensified. Ethan stepped forward, his voice steady but firm. "Let her go. Now." The man smirked. "Ah, Mr. Whitman. You always did like to play the hero. But heroes, they're fragile. And fragile things break." Luis crouched, scanning for possible weapons or escape routes. "Ethan, there's more of them than we thought. They're not just bodyguards, they're organizers. Security protocols, traps. If we make a wrong move, Maya..." His voice trailed off, the unspoken threat hanging heavy in the air. Ethan took a deep breath. He had trained for these moments, but nothing prepared him for the weight of seeing Maya in that vulnerable state. He clenched his fists, then took a step forward. "We're not here to fight for glory. We're here to save a life." The man tilted his head, amused. "A life? Or a symbol? You've been chasing her for months, haven't you? All your resources, your money, your connections. And for what? One child." Maya's eyes met Ethan's, fear mixed with a glimmer of recognition, a faint hope. Something inside him snapped, a fatherly instinct that surged stronger than caution, calculation, or fear. "I don't care what she is to the world," Ethan said, his voice low and dangerous. "She is everything to me." The suited man laughed, but it was hollow. He raised a hand and the two accomplices stepped forward, closing the distance. A tense standoff unfolded, Ethan and Luis on one side, Maya behind them, the kidnappers poised to strike. Every second stretched, heavy with anticipation. Mia's voice crackled urgently through the earpiece. "Ethan, I've got a way to disable the main security grid. You need to hold them off for 3 minutes. 3 minutes and the rest is yours." Ethan nodded subtly to Luis, who understood immediately. This was no longer a confrontation, it was a calculated gamble. Each movement mattered. Every heartbeat counted. Suddenly the first accomplice lunged. Ethan reacted instinctively, sidestepping, grabbing a metal pipe from the floor, swinging with precision. Luis intercepted the second, using leverage to send him crashing into a stack of crates. The warehouse erupted into chaos. Metal clanged, footsteps pounded, and Maya's frightened cries cut through it all. The suited man stepped back, visibly impressed, but anger quickly replaced amusement. He pulled a small device from his coat, a taser-like tool humming ominously. "You don't know what you're up against," he sneered, pressing a button. Lights flickered violently. Mia's warning came just in time. "Now, Ethan. I've got the cameras offline for 30 seconds. Ethan moved with speed born of desperation, blocking the man's attack and closing the distance between him and Maya's cage. Luis joined, securing the door. The metal lock gave way under their combined strength. Maya stumbled out, eyes wide, voice trembling. "It's okay," Ethan said, voice breaking with emotion. "You're safe now. "You're coming home." For the first time in what felt like an eternity, Maya hesitated, then ran into Ethan's arms. The suited man glared, rage burning in his eyes, but the advantage had shifted. The element of surprise, Mia's tech, and Ethan's unwavering resolve had turned the tide. The first confrontation was over, but Ethan knew this was only the beginning. The warehouse was just one node in a sprawling network, and the people behind Maya's disappearance were far from finished. Yet, as he held her close, feeling her trembling subside, Ethan understood one truth. A life saved, no matter how fragile, was a victory. And sometimes, victory begins not with brute force, but with the courage to step into the darkness and refuse to turn away. The warehouse lay silent now, save for the hum of emergency lights and the occasional creak of settling metal. Ethan held Maya close, rocking her gently as she whispered fragmented fears and memories of the people who had taken her. Luis scanned the surrounding area, taking careful notes of security cameras, hidden exits, and coded messages etched into walls. "This isn't just a random kidnapping," Luis muttered, shaking his head. "They've been operating like this for years, different locations, different victims, same methods. Someone's coordinating all of it." Ethan nodded, his mind racing. "We need names, addresses, phone numbers, everything. Whoever is behind this has a pattern. Find it and we can dismantle the network from the inside." By dawn, they had extracted a USB drive from the warehouse office. Dust and grime clung to the device, but the digital files inside were pristine. Financial ledgers, encrypted emails, surveillance logs, evidence of years of meticulously orchestrated child trafficking operations. One email in particular froze Ethan's blood, a correspondence between the suited man and a high-profile financier who had funded multiple facilities across the country. The note was simple yet chilling. "The project is secure. No one will interfere." Maya, now sitting on a cot, traced the outlines of her hands. "They said I was worthless, that no one would ever find me." Her voice cracked. Ethan pulled her into a firm hug. "You're everything to me. And no one will ever make you feel that way again." Luis tapped on his tablet, bringing up a map dotted with markers. "We can start tracing the financial transactions. Each location they've used has a unique funding trail. If we follow the money, we follow them." Ethan stared at the screen, each red dot representing a child lost and forgotten. But as overwhelming as it was, clarity emerged from the chaos. Every facility, every transfer, every coded communication led back to a central hub, a corporate front disguised as a philanthropic organization. And at the top sat the financier, the puppet master behind the chaos. Mia, joining via video call, spoke urgently. "I've been running their server logs. They've got digital fingerprints everywhere. If we cross-reference the IP addresses with the banking trails, we can pinpoint current operations, and maybe prevent another abduction." Ethan clenched his fists. "Do it. I want every child accounted for. And I want the people responsible exposed to the light." For the next 48 hours the team worked tirelessly. Mia decrypted encrypted communications while Luis cross-checked ledger entries. Ethan coordinated field operatives, tracing shipments, surveillance footage, and staff movements. Each lead uncovered more shocking truths. Children had been systematically switched, identities erased, records tampered with, and families left unaware of their true circumstances. Among the files, Maya found a photograph, a group of children from different states, all wearing the same branded wristbands used by the network. Her eyes widened in horror. These are the other kids," she whispered. "They're still out there." Ethan placed a hand over hers. "We'll find them. One by one we'll bring them home." As the pieces fell into place, a deeper layer of betrayal emerged. One of the warehouses had been protected not only by hired guards but also by insiders, hospital staff, administrative officials, even law enforcement complicit in covering tracks. The realization hit hard. This wasn't just organized crime, it was a conspiracy that had infiltrated institutions meant to protect children. Mia's voice came through with urgency. "Ethan, there's something you need to see. It's a hidden folder in their main server, codenamed Phoenix. It contains personal files, birth records, and correspondences indicating that the financier intends to expand operations internationally. This isn't just a national issue, it's global." Luis exhaled sharply. "They're not just kidnappers, they're identity manipulators. They've stolen names, erased pasts, and sold futures. This is bigger than we imagined." Ethan looked at Maya, determination burning in his eyes. "Then we stop them. Not just for you, not just for these children, but for every child who could be erased tomorrow." We trace the network, we gather proof, and we bring everyone involved to justice. No one hides in the shadows when we're done. That night, the team set up a war room in Ethan's safe house. Maps covered the walls, screens flickered with incoming data, and the names of children, some known, some still missing, were pinned with colored markers. Each file told a story of loss, fear, and stolen innocence. Maya, sitting beside Ethan, traced the photos, silently memorizing faces. "I want to help," she said softly. "I want to make sure no one goes through what I did." Ethan smiled, a mixture of pride and resolve. "You already are helping. By being brave, by remembering, by telling the truth. That's the first step toward ending this nightmare." And for the first time since her abduction, Maya allowed herself to feel hope. Hope that the network could be dismantled, that stolen identities could be restored, that justice could reach even the darkest corners. The first confrontation had saved her. The discovery of the network had revealed the true scale of the enemy. And now, with every file uncovered, every lead traced, the fight to reclaim stolen childhoods had only just begun. Ethan's voice cut through the room, steady and commanding. "We move at dawn. Every connection, every name, every secret, we're exposing it all. No one anywhere gets to hide." Maya squeezed his hand. "Together?" "Together," Ethan promised. And in that unspoken agreement, a family forged in tragedy became the spearhead of a mission that would shake the very foundations of the network, lighting the first spark of hope for countless lost children. Dawn broke over the city in streaks of gold and gray, the streets still quiet as if holding its breath. Ethan, Maya, and their team had spent the night mapping every thread of the network, and now the hunt for the mastermind, the financier known only as Calder, was at the forefront of their minds. Calder had always been elusive, a shadow in designer suits who left no fingerprints and wielded influence like a weapon. But every shadow has a crack, and Ethan had found one. Maya adjusted the tablet in her hands, eyes scanning the latest decrypted email chain. "Calder's movements aren't random," she said. "He's predictable. He believes he's untouchable, but he always checks in with the same few contacts every Tuesday and Friday. If we intercept those communications..." Luis leaned over, pointing at a map dotted with pins. "And these 3 locations," he said, voice low. "They correspond to properties Calder owns, fronts for his philanthropic work. We can stake them out, see who comes and goes, and maybe get him on tape coordinating operations." Ethan nodded, determination etched across his face. "We need more than surveillance. Calder's network runs deep. We need evidence, financial, digital, human. If we expose him, we dismantle everything else connected to him." By mid-morning they split into teams. Maya and Ethan staked out the primary estate, a sprawling mansion camouflaged behind high walls and security cameras. Luis infiltrated a secondary property, posing as a maintenance worker to observe activity inside. Meanwhile, Mia, working remotely, traced the financial trails connecting shell companies, hidden accounts, and offshore transfers, all linked back to Calder's operations. Hours passed like slow-burning seconds. Every car that passed, every staff member who entered the estate, every coded gesture was noted, logged, and analyzed. And then, finally, the first breakthrough arrived. A courier appeared at the front gate, carrying a sleek, unmarked briefcase. The driver's license traced back to a shell company used repeatedly in Calder's past dealings. Ethan signaled to Maya. "Record everything. This could be our opening." The courier entered the mansion, and a few minutes later, Calder himself emerged, tall, impeccably dressed, radiating a calm arrogance that seemed impervious to suspicion. His sharp eyes scanned the perimeter, and he didn't see Ethan and Maya crouched behind the ornamental hedge. Luis' earpiece crackled. "He's making a phone call. Mia, can you trace it?" Seconds later, Mia's voice came through, calm but intense. "Direct line to Geneva. Yes, it's the same account. He's transferring funds again. This is our proof. Audio, video, and financial records all align." Maya's hands shook slightly as she pressed record on the tablet. "Ethan, he's talking about the next batch of children." Her voice faltered, then steadied with resolve. "We have to move fast. We can't let another kid be stolen." Ethan's jaw tightened. "We won't. Not on my watch." They continued surveillance for hours, collecting every interaction, every coded message, every exchange of cash or documents. By nightfall, the team had a treasure trove of evidence. Calder had grown confident over the years because no one had dared to follow the breadcrumbs all the way to him. But now, with logs, photos, videos, and decrypted emails, his empire of deception was exposed. Back at the safe house, the team gathered around a large table, the evidence spread like a map of crimes. Maya's voice was soft but resolute. He's arrogant. He believes he's untouchable. But arrogance leaves a trail. We can follow it to every accomplice, every front, every hidden child. Luis tapped on a folder labeled Phoenix. This contains detailed records of the children. Names, ages, locations, even medical records tampered with to erase their identities. It's horrifying. But if we present this to the authorities... Ethan cut him off, voice firm. We won't just present it. We'll deliver it with irrefutable proof. Calder won't have any room to manipulate, bribe, or threaten. His network falls tonight. Hours turned into an orchestrated rhythm of planning. Field agents were alerted, warrant requests prepared, and a detailed strike plan was drawn. Every move, every piece of evidence, every line of code had been meticulously analyzed. Then, in the stillness of the night, Maya finally spoke, her voice breaking the tension. Ethan, what if he's smarter than we think? What if he's already moved the children? Ethan's eyes met hers, steady and unwavering. Then we find them. Every last one. Calder may think he controls the system, but he doesn't control us. We fight with truth, and truth is stronger than lies. No child gets lost on our watch. As they finalized the plan, a new energy surged through the room. For the first time in years, the shadow that had haunted the nation, the unseen hand of Calder, was within reach. And Ethan, Maya, and their team knew one thing with absolute certainty: the mastermind's fall was inevitable. Because when truth is armed with courage, even the most untouchable shadows cannot hide. The first rays of sunlight barely touched the city skyline when the strike team moved into position. Ethan, Maya, and Luis were stationed at vantage points around Calder's primary estate, their hearts pounding in a rhythm that matched the quiet tension of the dawn. Today, everything depended on precision and timing. One misstep could mean the children would vanish forever. Inside the mansion, Calder remained oblivious, reviewing plans in his study, the air thick with arrogance and overconfidence. His private security, loyal and heavily armed, patrolled in predictable loops, patterns that Ethan's team had memorized down to the second. Every camera, every blind spot, every hallway had been accounted for. Ready? Ethan whispered, checking his earpiece. Maya's eyes were sharp, scanning the estate through a scope. We move on my signal. Remember, quiet, swift, surgical. These kids are counting on us. Luis signaled from the side gate. Team Bravo in position. Local authorities are on standby. SWAT units will breach simultaneously at 3 points. At precisely 6:03 a.m., the operation began. The silent hum of drones above captured every movement. Gates were opened remotely, security cameras looped to hide the intrusion. Ethan led the first breach, slipping through the side entrance while Maya and Luis flanked him. Inside, the mansion felt unnervingly quiet, too quiet. They moved methodically, checking rooms, closets, and hidden compartments. Then Maya's voice crackled in Ethan's earpiece, urgent but controlled. Multiple children. 5 in total. Locked in a soundproofed wing. No sign of Calder yet. The team's adrenaline surged. They located the wing through a series of hidden panels behind false walls. Each door was reinforced with locks that had been engineered to keep the children contained but were no match for Ethan's lockpicking skills. The first door swung open, revealing 3 children huddled together, fear etched into their small faces. "Shoo, it's okay, you're safe now," Ethan whispered, kneeling to their level. He recognized their fear, the same fear he had seen in countless other victims. One little boy clung to a ragged blanket, eyes wide and unblinking. Maya handed the children water and small snacks, coaxing them to trust them slowly, step by cautious step. Meanwhile, Luis worked on the remaining rooms, uncovering 2 more children, both too frightened to speak. But as they stepped into the sunlight for the first time in years, tentative smiles began to form. Relief washed over Ethan, tempered by the urgency of the mission still unfolding. Back upstairs, Calder finally realized the intrusion. He stormed out of his study, face pale with shock and rage. "What? Who? How did you?" he stammered, reaching for his phone to alert his guards. Ethan intercepted him in the hallway. "It's over, Calder. No one else gets hurt today. You're done." Calder's security rushed in, but law enforcement units, already in position from Maya and Luis's coordination, swiftly neutralized them. SWAT teams moved through every exit, securing the perimeter. Calder's empire of fear collapsed in under 10 minutes, years of manipulation and lies crumbling into chaos. In the estate's courtyard, the rescued children were escorted into waiting vehicles, wrapped in blankets, comforted by social workers and volunteers from Ethan's network. Maya remained by Ethan's side, whispering, "They'll be safe now. All of them. Every last one." Ethan's eyes, however, lingered on Calder, cuffed and enraged, shouting that the children weren't theirs to save. "They belong to me," he bellowed. But the words fell on deaf ears, drowned out by the sounds of laughter and tentative sobs from the children finally tasting freedom. Later, in a makeshift command center set up in the estate's garage, the team cataloged evidence found during the raid: ledgers, encrypted drives, and medical records that detailed years of stolen identities, falsified adoptions, and hidden transfers. Each file was a story, a stolen childhood waiting to be restored. Ethan stared at a stack of folders labeled with children's pseudonyms. "Every one of these names is real. Every one of them deserves to be known, to be remembered," he said quietly. Maya nodded. "And now they will be." Calder underestimated us. He underestimated the truth, the power of people who refuse to stay silent. Luis chimed in, tapping a digital map on the wall. "And this is just the beginning. There are more properties, more children, more evidence." Calder was only the tip of the iceberg. Ethan clenched his fists, a mixture of exhaustion and determination in his posture. "Then we continue. Every child we find, every record we restore, it's one more life saved, one more family reunited." As the sun rose higher, bathing the estate in gold light, the first children were taken to temporary safe houses. Volunteers hugged them, sang to them, and offered the warmth and stability they hadn't known for years. And in that fragile, tender moment, Ethan felt a profound truth settle in his heart. While evil may hide in shadows, courage and compassion, when relentless, shine brighter than any darkness. Tonight, the mastermind would sit in a jail cell. But tomorrow the real work would begin, rebuilding lives, restoring identities, and ensuring that every stolen childhood became a story of hope, resilience, and justice. The first wave of rescued children, blinking in sunlight, smiling tentatively for the first time in years, were proof that no system of lies could ever completely silence the truth. The first rays of sunlight barely touched the city skyline when the strike team moved into position. Ethan, Maya, and Luis were stationed at vantage points around Calder's primary estate, their hearts pounding in a rhythm that matched the quiet tension of the dawn. Today, everything depended on precision and timing. One misstep could mean the children would vanish forever. Inside the mansion, Calder remained oblivious, reviewing plans in his study, the air thick with arrogance and overconfidence. His private security, loyal and heavily armed, patrolled in predictable loops, patterns that Ethan's team had memorized down to the second. Every camera, every blind spot, every hallway had been accounted for. "Ready?" Ethan whispered, checking his earpiece. Maya's eyes were sharp, scanning the estate through a scope. "We move on my signal. Remember, quiet, swift, surgical. These kids are counting on us." Luis signaled from the side gate. "Team Bravo in position. Local authorities are on standby. SWAT units will breach simultaneously at 3 points." At precisely 6:03 a.m., the operation began. The silent hum of drones above captured every movement. Gates were opened remotely, security cameras looped to hide the intrusion. Ethan led the first breach, slipping through the side entrance while Maya and Luis flanked him. Inside, the mansion felt unnervingly quiet, too quiet. They moved methodically, checking rooms, closets, and hidden compartments. Then Maya's voice crackled in Ethan's earpiece, urgent but controlled. "Multiple children. 5 in total. Locked in a soundproofed wing. No sign of Calder yet." The team's adrenaline surged. They located the wing through a series of hidden panels behind false walls. Each door was reinforced with locks that had been engineered to keep the children contained but were no match for Ethan's lockpicking skills. The first door swung open, revealing 3 children huddled together, fear etched into their small faces. "Shoo, it's okay, you're safe now," Ethan whispered, kneeling to their level. He recognized their fear, the same fear he had seen in countless other victims. One little boy clung to a ragged blanket, eyes wide and unblinking. Maya handed the children water and small snacks, coaxing them to trust them slowly, step by cautious step. Meanwhile, Luis worked on the remaining rooms, uncovering 2 more children, both too frightened to speak. But as they stepped into the sunlight for the first time in years, tentative smiles began to form. Relief washed over Ethan, tempered by the urgency of the mission still unfolding. Back upstairs, Calder finally realized the intrusion. He stormed out of his study, face pale with shock and rage. "What? Who? How did you?" he stammered, reaching for his phone to alert his guards. Ethan intercepted him in the hallway. "It's over, Calder. No one else gets hurt today. You're done." Calder's security rushed in, but law enforcement units, already in position from Maya and Luis's coordination, swiftly neutralized them. SWAT teams moved through every exit, securing the perimeter. Calder's empire of fear collapsed in under 10 minutes, years of manipulation and lies crumbling into chaos. In the estate's courtyard, the rescued children were escorted into waiting vehicles, wrapped in blankets, comforted by social workers and volunteers from Ethan's network. Maya remained by Ethan's side, whispering, "They'll be safe now. All of them. Every last one." Ethan's eyes, however, lingered on Calder, cuffed and enraged, shouting that the children weren't theirs to save. "They belong to me," he bellowed. But the words fell on deaf ears, drowned out by the sounds of laughter and tentative sobs from the children finally tasting freedom. Later, in a makeshift command center set up in the estate's garage, the team cataloged evidence found during the raid, ledgers, encrypted drives, and medical records that detailed years of stolen identities, falsified adoptions, and hidden transfers. Each file was a story, a stolen childhood waiting to be restored. Ethan stared at a stack of folders labeled with children's pseudonyms. "Every one of these names is real. Every one of them deserves to be known, to be remembered," he said quietly. Maya nodded. "And now they will be." Calder underestimated us. He underestimated the truth, the power of people who refuse to stay silent. Luis chimed in, tapping a digital map on the wall. "And this is just the beginning. There are more properties, more children, more evidence." Calder was only the tip of the iceberg. Ethan clenched his fists, a mixture of exhaustion and determination in his posture. "Then we continue. Every child we find, every record we restore, it's one more life saved, one more family reunited." As the sun rose higher, bathing the estate in gold light, the first children were taken to temporary safe houses. Volunteers hugged them, sang to them, and offered the warmth and stability they hadn't known for years. And in that fragile, tender moment, Ethan felt a profound truth settle in his heart. While evil may hide in shadows, courage and compassion, when relentless, shine brighter than any darkness. Tonight, the mastermind would sit in a jail cell. But tomorrow, the real work would begin, rebuilding lives, restoring identities, and ensuring that every stolen childhood became a story of hope, resilience, and justice. The first wave of rescued children, blinking in sunlight, smiling tentatively for the first time in years, were proof that no system of lies could ever completely silence the truth. Ethan's phone buzzed just as he was about to leave the command center for a briefing with federal authorities. The number was unrecognized, an area code he didn't recognize. He hesitated, then answered cautiously. "Mr. Holt?" a calm, measured voice said. "I believe I can help you." Ethan frowned. "Who is this?" "My name is Jordan Price," the voice replied. "I worked for Calder, briefly. I left when I realized what he was doing. I've been watching, waiting for someone capable enough to take him down." Ethan exchanged a glance with Maya, who had joined him. "Why now? Why call us?" "Because they've begun covering tracks faster than ever," Jordan said. "Calder isn't the mastermind. He's just the face. There's someone higher up, someone who's been orchestrating this for decades. I have files, logs, and names, proof of everything I know. But I need protection to hand them over safely." Luis leaned forward, skeptical. "How do we know you're not lying?" Jordan chuckled softly, but there was no warmth in it. "Because if I were lying, I wouldn't be alive long enough to speak. I've already taken precautions." After a tense hour of negotiation, Ethan agreed to a secure, untraceable video conference. Jordan appeared on the screen, a middle-aged man with sharp eyes, graying hair, and a presence that suggested he had always been a step ahead. He began methodically, revealing layers of Calder's network that no one had known existed. It wasn't just the children or the financial manipulations. This was a meticulously organized system of influence, designed to infiltrate hospitals, adoption agencies, and even government records. Each component had a fail-safe, ensuring that if one branch was exposed, the others could continue operating without interruption. Calder was smart, Jordan admitted. But he was greedy. He thought he was untouchable. He underestimated people like you, and underestimated the consequences of leaving a loose end. Maya's eyes narrowed. "And you're saying you're that loose end?" Jordan nodded. "Exactly. I have access to the main database, the origin point, the files that prove the network's hierarchy, the falsified identities, the connections to wealthy and powerful individuals. Without me, you'll only ever see the branches. With me, you can trace the root." Ethan felt a shiver. This was the breakthrough they had been waiting for, yet the stakes had just multiplied. "We'll need assurances," he said. Protection, legal immunity, and a secure route to transfer those files. Jordan smiled faintly. I've thought of that. I've already taken measures to ensure my safety. But there's something else you need to know. Calder isn't acting alone. He has allies in unexpected places. People you would never suspect who have quietly ensured this operation's survival. Once I hand over the files, you'll see the full scope. Some of these people are still very powerful. Luis leaned back, rubbing his temples. We're talking about a systemic conspiracy here. Not just a criminal enterprise, but a network embedded in society itself. Jordan nodded gravely. Yes. And that's why timing is critical. You can't move too early, or the evidence will be destroyed. But you can't wait too long or the children, those who are still out there, will be lost forever. Ethan exhaled, feeling the weight of the responsibility settle on his shoulders. Then we do this carefully but decisively. Lives are at stake. Justice isn't just about punishment, it's about saving those who can't save themselves. Jordan's expression softened slightly. You're different from Calder. He only cared about control. You care about the children. That difference alone could dismantle everything he's built. Over the next few days, Jordan worked closely with Ethan, Maya, and Luis. Using encrypted channels and secure file transfers, he provided a treasure trove of evidence. Detailed records of adoptions, falsified birth certificates, financial transactions tracing money from charitable foundations to secret accounts, and correspondence linking the network's leaders. It was overwhelming. Every document, every email, every recorded conversation revealed a story of exploitation, manipulation, and greed on a scale Ethan had never imagined. But amidst the horror there was hope. Each piece of evidence brought them closer to freeing children, exposing perpetrators, and dismantling the hidden empire. Late one night, after reviewing hundreds of files, Ethan turned to Maya and whispered, "I didn't expect to find an ally within the enemy's ranks." Maya smiled tiredly. "Sometimes the right person appears in the most unexpected place. We just have to recognize them when they do." Ethan nodded, thinking of the children waiting for justice, of families torn apart and lives stolen. With Jordan's help, they could finally reach the root of the network. But Ethan knew one thing for certain. This was far from over. Calder was only one player, and the real battle, the one that could change countless lives, was just beginning. As the team prepared for the next move, the sense of urgency sharpened. The revelation of Jordan Price as an ally brought new hope, but also new dangers. They were no longer merely reacting, they were planning a strike that could dismantle an empire built on secrecy, manipulation, and stolen identities. And every moment counted. The sun had barely risen over New Orleans when Ethan, Maya, Luis, and Jordan convened in a nondescript warehouse on the outskirts of the city. The morning fog hung low, shrouding the streets and giving the city a surreal stillness, as if the world itself was holding its breath. Inside the warehouse, laptops hummed, encrypted connections blinked, and the team moved with quiet precision. "This is it," Ethan said, spreading a map across the table. Red pins marked the locations of suspected network operations, orphanages, and private medical facilities linked to Calder's network. Jordan leaned over, pointing at a cluster of pins in Louisiana. "These 3 facilities," Jordan explained, "are interconnected. They handle document falsification, identity swaps, and placement of children into homes that shield them from oversight. We take these down first and we send a signal to the rest of the network. Their system isn't untouchable." Maya scrolled through digital files, cross-referencing names, timestamps, and financial records. "We've confirmed active cases at these locations. There are at least 12 children who could be at risk right now." Luis shook his head. "We're talking about a multi-state operation. If anything goes wrong, the fallout could be catastrophic. Federal authorities are ready, but we need precision. No mistakes." Ethan took a deep breath. This is why Jordan is critical. He knows their internal protocols, the schedules, and the weaknesses they never considered. If anyone can guide us through this safely, it's him. By mid-morning, the team moved out in 2 unmarked SUVs. Ethan drove the lead vehicle, Maya beside him, while Jordan and Luis followed in the second. The streets were quiet, almost too quiet, the calm masking the tension building in their chests. At the first facility, a seemingly abandoned warehouse tucked behind a chain-link fence, Jordan whispered instructions into their earpieces. Security cameras had blind spots. Doors unlocked on a timer. Guards followed rigid routines, unaware that their every move had already been logged and analyzed. They entered the building swiftly, silently, using key codes Jordan had memorized years ago. Inside, the air smelled of bleach and old machinery. Filing cabinets lined the walls, many locked, but Jordan had anticipated that. Within minutes he had located the master vault, a reinforced steel door containing digital storage devices and thousands of documents. Maya started transferring files to secure drives, each document a potential revelation. Falsified birth certificates, adoption records, financial transfers disguised as charity donations, and encrypted communications with hospital staff. Meanwhile, Luis and Ethan secured the facility, ensuring no one slipped through unnoticed. Then they heard footsteps, 2 guards approaching the vault corridor. Ethan signaled Maya to hide and he and Luis moved into the shadows. Jordan, surprisingly calm, whispered, "Follow my lead." He approached the guards with a confidence that only years inside the network could produce. "Delivery for the manager," he said smoothly, presenting a fake authorization badge he had prepared months ago. The guards, trained to follow procedure rather than question authority, nodded and allowed him to pass. Within moments, the threat was neutralized without confrontation. By noon, the first facility was secured, files extracted, and all children accounted for, 2 of them visibly shaken but unharmed. Emergency contacts were activated, and the children were taken to safe temporary housing under federal supervision. The second facility posed a different challenge. It was a private medical center in Baton Rouge, ostensibly a pediatric clinic, but Jordan knew better. This was a hub for identity manipulations, the place where falsified medical records had been created. The team approached carefully, disguising themselves as routine inspectors. Inside, they encountered staff who were unusually nervous, sensing something was wrong but unaware of the precision and planning guiding the team. Maya discreetly collected digital files from computers while Jordan identified hidden storage locations. Ethan kept watch, ready to intervene if necessary, while Luis monitored external surveillance. After hours of careful extraction, they secured hundreds of medical files, each revealing cases of stolen identities, manipulated DNA records, and forged parental consents. It was a staggering amount of evidence, enough to implicate the entire regional network. As they loaded the final drives into their SUVs, Jordan finally spoke, his voice low but resolute. "This is only the beginning. Calder's people will respond and they will be desperate. But the signal has been set. The network knows it's vulnerable now. And with this evidence, the authorities can dismantle it completely." Ethan exhaled, feeling the weight of the morning lift slightly. "We've saved lives today, but this fight is far from over. Calder won't give up, and the deeper we go, the more dangerous it will become." Jordan nodded. "And that's why you have to remain focused. Every child we rescue, every document we recover, is a step toward justice. The network thrives on fear and secrecy. We strip both away, one facility, one record, one truth at a time." As the SUVs disappeared into the Louisiana traffic, Ethan looked out at the horizon. Sunlight glinted off the Mississippi River, a symbol of the journey ahead, unpredictable, winding but flowing toward the promise of redemption and justice. And for the first time in months he felt the faint spark of hope, the knowledge that, armed with truth, courage and unexpected allies, they could finally take the fight to Calder and the hidden empire he had built. Even as Ethan, Maya, Jordan and Luis celebrated the initial success of their operation, a storm was quietly brewing in the shadows. In a penthouse overlooking downtown New Orleans, a sleek black limousine pulled up, and Calder stepped out, his expression unreadable. His empire had been shaken, but the fire in his eyes burned hotter than ever. He surveyed the city below, thinking not of what he had lost but of how he could strike back. "They think this is a victory," he muttered, voice low and dangerous. "But they've only exposed the first layer. I have contingencies. And my reach is far beyond what they imagine." Calder's strategist, a woman known only as Seraphine, leaned in. She had orchestrated complex identity manipulations for years, building a network of silent operatives embedded in hospitals, law firms and private security. "We've traced the leaks," she said, scrolling through a tablet. "They're working with Jordan. He compromised the front lines. But the deeper layers, those records and hidden connections, remain ours. We can strike where they least expect." In the same moment, back at their temporary command center, Ethan reviewed the data extracted from the Louisiana facilities. His stomach knotted as he noticed anomalies, encrypted folders that hadn't been decrypted yet, metadata suggesting that Calder's people had moved files moments before the team arrived. "Jordan," Ethan said urgently, pulling him aside, "someone knew we were coming. How is that possible?" Jordan frowned, tapping through layers of code. "It's clever. Calder has operatives embedded in every major state registry, every adoption and medical database we accessed. Some of these files were decoys, bait to test us. Whoever he placed here, they're still active. And if we're not careful, they'll retaliate, and fast. Luis leaned against the wall, arms crossed. So we're not just dismantling an operation. We're walking into a spiderweb, and Calder's been spinning it for decades. Maya's voice was quiet but firm. Which means we need to rethink every move. Every rescue, every document, every child's safety. One misstep, and it's more than just evidence lost. We could trigger exposure that puts them in real danger. Meanwhile, Calder's network began to move. False alerts were sent to social workers, orphanages were flooded with fake emergency calls, and the operatives embedded in hospitals started rerouting children to unknown locations. Calder wasn't just fighting for control, he was reclaiming the very lives his empire had manipulated for years. That evening, Ethan convened an emergency meeting. We underestimated Calder's reach, he admitted, rubbing his temples. We've opened Pandora's box. And now he's using it against us. Jordan pulled out a map, highlighting new areas of concern. We've identified 3 high-risk zones where children could be relocated within the next 48 hours. If we can intercept these movements, we minimize risk and secure evidence that could finally dismantle the network entirely. Maya added, and we can't forget the digital front. Calder's tech assets are sophisticated, encrypted comms, decoy drives, even AI tools that predict rescue patterns. He's using technology like a weapon, anticipating every step we take. The team sat in tense silence, the weight of responsibility pressing down. For every child they had saved, Calder's retaliation could undo everything. Every misstep could cost lives, every hesitation could be exploited. Ethan's jaw tightened. Then we hit smarter, faster, and we trust each other completely. Calder can't anticipate human intuition, only predictable patterns. We adapt, we move, and we protect every single child. As night fell over New Orleans, the city seemed peaceful from above, but the team knew better. The enemy was invisible, capable of striking anywhere. They double-checked every protocol, encrypted every file, and deployed scouts along key transport routes. In a small apartment converted into their surveillance hub, Jordan whispered, "This isn't just about evidence anymore. It's about survival, for them and for us. Calder doesn't just hide in shadows. He is the shadow." Luis looked at Ethan, eyes hard. "Then we become the light. Every move we make has to illuminate the truth. For the children, for the families, for the world that's still asleep to what he's done." Miles away, Calder stared at live feeds of the city, his finger tracing routes on a digital map. "Let them think they've won," he muttered. "They've seen the surface. But the deeper game, that belongs to me." And in that quiet tension, both sides prepared. One fueled by justice, by the courage of the innocent, and the other by control, secrecy, and a decades-old thirst for power. The first strike was over, but the hidden enemy was ready to make the next move, a move that could change everything. The city awoke to an electric tension. News of the ongoing operation had leaked in hushed whispers, and for the first time, Calder felt the weight of scrutiny pressing down from all sides. His operatives scrambled to cover tracks, but Ethan and his team had already anticipated the moves, tracing the digital fingerprints back to hidden locations. Ethan stood on the rooftop of their temporary hub, surveying the skyline as the first light of dawn broke over the Mississippi River. "Today ends," he murmured, gripping his headset, "or at least it begins to end." In a concealed warehouse near Baton Rouge, Calder's top lieutenants gathered, unaware that the FBI, working with the Grace Alliance network, had infiltrated their comms. The team knew that Calder would try to manipulate escape routes and displace children again, but this time there would be no room for error. Jordan coordinated the field units, guiding them through abandoned streets and hidden alleys. "Move with precision," he instructed. "Every child we secure is a victory, and every piece of evidence we recover is another nail in Calder's coffin." Meanwhile, Maya and Luis led the effort to track Calder himself. Through months of digital surveillance, insider tips, and painstaking analysis, they pinpointed a secluded estate near Lake Pontchartrain, Calder's hidden sanctuary. The mansion, fortified and shadowed by tall cypress trees, was both a fortress and a prison, housing not just files and money but the psychological hold Calder had over decades of manipulation. As the team approached under cover of darkness, Calder sensed the encroachment. "They're coming," he whispered, not in fear but in anticipation. "Let them see how deep the game truly goes." He moved through hidden passages and security checkpoints with a practiced ease, confident that his empire of shadows would shield him. But the Grace Alliance team had learned to think like him. Every route Calder anticipated was a trap. Every window a surveillance point. Ethan led the breach team, heart pounding with a mix of adrenaline and determination. For the children, he said before signaling the go. The first doors were forced open, alarms muted through prior cyber infiltration. Children hidden in secluded rooms, some crying softly, others too traumatized to speak, were gently gathered, reassured with soft words and calm presence. Each rescue was a delicate balance between speed and care, and every child reclaimed was a testament to the patience and courage of the team. Calder, cornered in his study, finally faced the culmination of his decades-long manipulation. He stood tall, defiant, but the reality was undeniable. The empire he had built on stolen identities and fear was crumbling. Ethan stepped forward, hand on his sidearm, not in aggression but in symbolic authority. It's over, Calder. Every life you've taken, every truth you've buried, is being restored. For the first time, a flicker of doubt passed across Calder's eyes. Do you think this changes anything? He sneered, voice wavering. The system is mine. You can't undo years of control. Jordan stepped beside Ethan, holding a tablet showing live feeds from all secured locations. Control isn't yours anymore. Every child you hid, every document you manipulated, every lie you told, it's all exposed. And justice isn't just coming. It's here. With no room to maneuver, Calder was taken into custody, his network unraveling simultaneously as field teams recovered additional evidence and rescued the last of the displaced children. In the ensuing hours, families reunited, social workers and volunteers worked tirelessly, and the story of recovery spread across local and national media, a story of resilience and courage overcoming a legacy of deceit. Later, at the Grace Alliance headquarters, Ethan, Maya, Jordan, and Luis watched as the children were reunited with parents, siblings, and guardians. Some reunions were tearful, some cautious, but each carried a profound sense of reclamation, not just of identity but of dignity and belonging. Emily, now matured into her role as the guiding force behind the network, stood quietly observing the organized chaos. She had been a child lost in the shadows of a wealthy empire, and now she watched as the invisible threads of Calder's manipulation were finally severed. With each life restored, the weight of responsibility she had carried began to ease, replaced with hope for the next generation. In a final act of closure, the team coordinated with federal authorities to ensure Calder's empire of falsified identities was dismantled completely. Hospitals audited their records, new protocols were enforced, and a nationwide registry was established to prevent such abuses in the future. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon over New Orleans, Emily walked through the corridors of the Grace Alliance headquarters. She paused at a wall lined with photographs of the children whose lives had been saved, the smiling faces a testament to perseverance, teamwork, and the refusal to let injustice stand. Ethan approached quietly, placing a hand on her shoulder. "You've done more than anyone could have imagined," he said softly. "Not just saving them but changing the way the world sees them. They are no longer invisible." Emily smiled, her gaze lingering on a photograph of a young boy she had once found lost and nameless. "It wasn't just me," she replied. "It was everyone who refused to turn away. Every life we reclaim is a reminder that one voice, one choice, can ignite a change that echoes far beyond us." And as night settled, the headquarters glowed softly, a beacon in the darkness. For every child rescued, for every truth revealed, and for every life restored, there was hope. A hope built on courage, persistence, and the unshakable belief that even the darkest empire cannot withstand the light of justice. The story of Calder's empire had ended, but the legacy of the Grace Alliance had just begun, a living testament that identity, truth, and compassion could never be stolen.